people think that usually only like white people are racist, but honestly, Asians are racists.
Well, every group is racist.
Every group, well, against another race.
Oh,
It's
you
just that
could be
they
against yourself too.
Can be against yourself.
I watch Filipinos do it all the time.
Uh-huh.
They would like degrade themselves, and you're like, yeah, you're like, it was very, very sad to see.
Okay. Today we will be talking about a very interesting topic that varies from country to country, right? Even state to state, I would say.
To a point, you can't. The opinions change state to state, but it's in the Constitution, so it can't change.
Oh, that's the hard thing about the U.S. You have different constitutions each state, so.
Yeah, but it's in the federal Constitution, so we can't. Even the states can't violate the federal Constitution.
Okay, let's talk about free speech.
Okay,
Let's talk about free speech. Taylor, what do you have for us today?
So the first thing is, and now you can kind of look up this because it's very different in other countries. For example, in England, Germany, they don't have constitutional rights to free speech. And so there's been this big uproar because what's happening is, at least for us in America, it's very shocking to see people being hauled in front of a judge and then receiving criminal sentences for hate speech. Because under the Constitution, you can't, the federal government cannot take away your right to free speech. And the debate is hate speech allowed? Because certain speech is even in America, we don't allow. And so how do we make this difference? How do we know what speeches does the federal government have a right to suppress? Mm-hmm. And what does it not have a right to suppress? So we can go through some like historical examples. Free speech, the freedom of the press, different things like that. For example, do you know what Hustler magazine is?
No.
So Hustler magazine's like Playboy,
Okay.
but it's a lot more lewd. So it's a lot more graphic. It was back when I was young. Mm-hmm. A lot of the pornography that you see today was not allowed. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, when you go way back, it wasn't allowed. You just couldn't do that kind of stuff. And so Hustler magazines, when you go into a gas station,
Yeah.
they would have them in bags behind everything and you could buy them. But people, of course, were offended by them. And so they, states tried to prevent that type of distribution of material in their state. It went to the United States Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court said that, they have a right, the government cannot restrict their right to expression, and that was through a printed press of those magazines. And so there are certain things that they can't, like you can put it out of the view of children, things like that, but you can't restrict it where you say you can't have access to this. Mm-hmm. So those are ideas of free speech, in the past that have been challenged by the Supreme Court. And so now you're watching a different development that's happening. And it's mainly caused because you'll see this happening in countries that are a lot more diverse. When you have a nation that doesn't have a common heritage, mm-hmm. You have different races, you have different cultures, different religions. Those things compete with each other. Yeah. And often people say very hateful things about people of other races and other religions or other cultures. And that can cause a big problem. And so you can have when you have hateful speech that's going around, well, what does that cause?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what happens when a bunch of people talks crap about other people? What usually is going to happen? Mm-hmm. You don't know?
No. But I've just got so used to it, so used to reading it and just people being so desensitized about it. Because when you're exposed to it so much, it doesn't really affect you anymore.
Yeah, but like if you allow one group to talk crap about another group, what ends up happening?
Fight.
Yeah. Violence.
Mm-hmm.
Violence is illegal. And so the idea is like, well, we could stop violence from ever happening. We could stop division if we could just stop certain speech.
Yeah. That would be so hard here in the US.
Well, yes, but there's problems when we go about that. So what is Abrams versus United States?
I guess it was something, I don't know, it was a great freedom of speech moment. It says the entry of the United States World War I ushered an unprecedented era of paranoia. Let me see.
So let's go back to this So in like England and Germany, they don't have it in their constitution, and so what they're doing is they're throwing people in jail for saying things on Facebook, and so about the migrants that are the immigrants that they have in their country because there are violent things happening.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware of some of that stuff that's going on.
Well, I heard about it just actually this weekend where people are becoming more, well, at least England is close to immigrants now because of a lot of violence going on and caused by immigrants.
Yeah.
So they're being strict about who to let in. But I didn't think it would even extend to the degree where your speech is, censored or regulated.
Well, since you're an immigrant, I want you to think about. I always like to put myself in other people's shoes, and then I have to look at it from their perspective. Okay, what if all of a sudden the United States and the Philippines had really bad relations, and people in America started saying things like, oh, I hate Filipinos. You should spit on Filipinos when you see them, and then you started having that stuff happen to you.
Well, let's just go back to.
Well,
what
I want to do it with you.
Yeah.
How would that make you feel? It'd be scary.
Scary. Yeah, definitely. No, I was going to lead you back to COVID because this happened during COVID.
Okay.
And it happened to a lot of majority Asian population here in the US.
Good example.
Right?
Yeah.
And there were a lot even scary in New York. They would just mug Asians who were just walking on the street.
There's few Asians that died.
Yeah, there were a lot of issues, and it caused an uproar in social media because they've posted videos of that, and that's just a really good example of just you being an immigrant.
Yeah.
Or not even immigrant. There are some Asians who grew up here, was born here. They're not really immigrants.
Yeah.
So they are Americans, but because
just
of
because
their
their
race,
yeah.
But because of their race, I guess it's, yeah, it'll be scary.
And in the past, we've had the issue of, with blacks having to go through and experience it. Because, you'd have things like the Ku Klux Klan running around saying very hateful things. And it's scary when you're a minority and people are allowed to say what they're, say hateful things about you because, not very intelligent people act upon hateful thoughts and different things. So on the one side, you have this problem in England, which they have, which is the fear, if you're the government, that it's going to get out of control. If we allow people to continue to speak and say things that are hateful about a group, people are going to violently act out. And we have a duty to protect, people that we've invited into our country.
Let's show them the case that you're.
Yeah, look it up. It's man gets 20 months for Facebook post.
Went on to say that you did not want your money going to immigrants who, quote, rape our kids and get priority, end quote. This offence is so serious that an immediate custodial sentence is unavoidable. Would you stand, please? The sentence that I pass has been reduced by 1/3 to reflect your guilty plea. The sentence is one of 20 months imprisonment.
Okay, so
for that post.
Yeah, so guy posts on Facebook and basically, you would go, okay, well, maybe he caused some violence or maybe posts like him caused violence, and that's why the judge was so harsh on a prison sentence. But I don't know all the surrounding facts. But One, we have to understand that first speech does lead to violence.
It does.
And so just people going around inciting and saying whatever they want. Why have a nation where you do not prosecute hate speech?
In the Philippines?
Well,
or just in general?
Everywhere. Like, why should we as Americans keep this right of free speech when it applies to hate speech?
Well, I think it's not that they don't regulate it. They just have this very strict rules when they should regulate it, which is right, because, well, hate speech is not really something that has, guidelines or standards where it would qualify as hate speech. It really depends on the audience. It really depends on who's listening. It really depends on who's saying it. Like if I said it, or maybe if I just said it to you, it may be a hate speech, but it's not really like as effective as when a popular influencer says it.
Oh, I know. When we talk about hate speech, one of the problems of categorizing something like that is
it's too broad.
Exactly. But hate or obscenity is created in the mind.
Exactly.
And so it's not an actual thing that you can do, because what is hateful to one person? Like, if I go like that to you.
Mm-hmm. For some people, it's funny.
Yes.
But for some people, it's offensive.
I think it's Afghanistan. This thumbs up is actually really offensive because sit on this. So it means...
Oh, gotcha.
Like it's like the middle finger for us.
Yes.
But it's for them.
See?
It's a thumbs up.
I just feel like I actually like the jurisprudence and how the United States Supreme Court has been interpreting how they regulate free speech.
Here's the test. The test is the Hudson Review, is what they'll do when they're determining whether a law can be created
to regulate.
There has to be a substantial interest, and it has to be narrowly drawn to that actual. So when the Supreme Court's going to look at a law, it doesn't mean you can't regulate it. It just, you have to meet those two tests, and that's very hard
to meet.
Yeah,
it's like the strict scrutiny, right?
Yes. And so let me go over first. Let's establish what the law is in the United States. This when it comes to hate speech, this is United States versus Schwimmer, and it says, speech that demeans on the base of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, age, disability, or any other similar grounds, and is hateful. But the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express the thoughts we hate. So hate speech is allowed in the United States. And that is the core, because the government's never, if you said, oh, we're free speech or hate speech is illegal and it's not part of free speech, well, nobody regulates nice speech. Mm-hmm. You're literally regulating nothing. That means that you basically
can't regulate anything.
Yeah, exactly. You effectively have a right that means nothing.
Exactly.
It's like you have to extend to other people the right to say hateful things, to express themselves. One, that's how we explore ideas, and also it allows people to express their disgust for those ideas. And so it allows certain things to happen. But in this idea of, well, let's go back to our example of Asians during COVID, that, people were expressing that, well, this was started in China, and so therefore somehow all Asian people are tied into this and should be held responsible, and encouraging violence. Well, there is a point at a society where your speech starts affecting the rights of other people, and the rights of the other people would be not to be harassed or harmed. So one way that they have looked at laws, and they break it down, is are you generally saying something hateful about, let's say a whole group of people? Well, that would be hate speech, and you would have a right to do that. But the more you direct it to individuals, that starts turning into harassment. Like, if I say something about a person individually and I bring up their race or their gender and everything, but I'm using it to harass or intimidate or start a fight, well, we don't protect that speech. Because that's too directed. You can make laws against that type of speech. Okay, the government could come in and say, "Hey, you can't, say something about somebody that's going to incite violence against each other."
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to punch you in the face.
But it also gets so far where they put themselves, like protesters have put themselves on race courses while cars are driving during a race just to protest their topics.
Yeah, because this would be
cementing themselves into the ground just to protest what their cause is.
Yeah, and so you have a freedom of expression, and one is that to protest, and that's a great example. But at the same time, it's, are you causing danger to other people when you're doing? Because I believe it was in California, they blocked a freeway during a protest, and it was by a hospital, and somebody was in an ambulance and they could not get to the hospital, and the person died, and they charged them with manslaughter, I believe, because while you have these rights, you also have
responsibility.
Just because you have the right for free speech doesn't mean you have the right that what you say then harms other people not to be civilly responsible for that.
Yeah. So in some, it's not absolute. You have it, but there are considerations that you have to consider.
That's a hard thing in the law. Is no right is absolute. No matter how much you want to. If there are other people that exist, you have to at some point realize, okay, there's a point where what you're doing harms that other person. And what speech that generally is, if you say you don't like a certain people, like everybody at some points understands why. Because, for example, a lot of people today, even in the United States, want hate speech against race to be against the law. But what they generally mean is certain races. Because what they would not accept was the fact that, well, at every major university now, if you go into any of the
big ones,
the social departments, they all preach and teach about the patriarchy, white male, basically white male hate. That's the basic way to put it. And it's white men cause all problems. White men are the problem, and it's white men hate. And that's all it is. It's lumping all white men together and saying they're the problem. And that speech should be protected because it's ideas and thoughts that need to be protected. But is that speech going to does it cause white men problem? Yes. Like, for example, right now I have a good friend that lost his job because he's a white man. Because he was told that, oh, well, you're privileged.
So you don't qualify.
Because of your skin, you are privileged, even though he's had no privilege in his life ever. And the company specifically replaced him with a minority. Not based upon his work performance or anything like that. They just said, well, we'll see you later. And they replaced him with a minority because that's what, well, the whole hate philosophy against white males is allowed to be preached, and it harmed him. And that still needs to be protected, even though I disagree with it.
Well, it's not something very popular, especially outside of the U.S. But people think that usually only like white people are racists. But honestly, Asians are racists.
Well, every group is racist.
Every group, against another race.
Oh, you could be against yourself too.
Can be against yourself.
I watch Filipinos do it all the time.
Uh-huh.
They would like degrade themselves, and you're like, yeah, you're like, it was very, very sad to see. But yeah, you'll see people do it against themselves.
Oh yeah, I've seen people do it.
Yeah.
For sure. But I'm just saying that it's only because it's the popular, I guess, because there are movies about it and they're like people are exposed to it, like the slavery and all those things
Yeah.
back then. That's why people think only like this certain
Yeah.
group.
So if you go to like the social departments, the reason why they claim white people are the only in America are the only races is because the argument is that white people hold a position of power. Okay, and so they're saying your ancestors, you guys hold the best jobs. When you go out into society, no one questions you. So you're privileged and you have power. And, you know, if somebody has no position or power and they say negative things about you, then there's really, the effect isn't the same. Mm-hmm. So while it is racist that, let's just use the example of a white man and a black woman. If a black woman curses out a white man, the argument is, well, she doesn't have the power he does. It doesn't affect him. If the police are called, she's the one that has the bigger fear than he does. Okay? And so the argument there is like, it's not racism in the way that it would affect the black woman. Mm-hmm. And so that's the argument for there. But the reality of the situation is it's so hard to make general blanket statements like that. For example, if I'm the white man and Halle Berry is the black woman, she has way more power than me in every context of every imaginable thing. Like, no police officer is going to show up and go, let's believe the white man. They're all going to look at it and go, this is Halle Berry. You know, that scenario is she holds way more power than I do in society. Just because of the reality is when you boil people down, people are so complex that making these distinctions like, oh, white men have this ability and that, in a general sense, in a lot of ways, yes, white men have a lot more privilege in American society than black females, but not in every case. There are a lot of white men that have no power, no position, they have nothing. And there are a lot of black females that are very powerful. In fact, Kamala Harris is probably going to be our next president. Okay? And so, woohoo. Yeah, claiming that she
is black.
Well,
because there's this meme that says she just turned black when she was endorsed as the new president candidate.
Well, there's a lot of things
she would never really acted.
She was going with Indian side and going all this, and then now she's going on
black
this side
because it has more voters, I guess.
Well, she needs to draw up the base, but I mean, she's. I think when I went and did her genealogy, I went through her genealogy to figure out like what she really is. She's about 20% black, somewhere around there. She's mostly white. She's more white than she is black. She has more white ancestors than she has black ancestors, but she's mostly Indian. Which, it doesn't matter. She's a minority woman. In any way that you look at it, she's a minority woman. I would be considered a white man. Mm. So, like in our interactions, she has way more power than I do. In every context. She came from a wealthier family. She was more privileged than me in every step of her life.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't come from a wealthy family. Wasn't given anything growing up. So the context that we say that we break people into, it's absurd. You know, you can make generalities of going, okay, if you take all these people, like we take Asian males. If you take Asian males in the United States, they do better than white males. But you can't say that on an individual basis. And so making these type of distinctions and arguments is problematic. But we still have to respect people's right to communicate those ideas.
We should be able to.
Even though it's going to have negative consequences on me. Like right now, the reality is...
If you did it in England, you will be jailed. Prison.
But the problem is what you have in England is what happens when you subvert voices. So if you were passionate about something you're Christian.
Yeah.
And the government came out and said, Christianity
Lord.
is offensive. It's offensive to minority groups like Muslims. Therefore, you're not allowed to voice your opinion about it. It's hateful, in fact, because they feel threatened by you, or gays, or whatever, because Christians have.
Yeah. And also it's
And so they
religion,
said,
so.
you can't express yourself in society. What happens?
Then all the Christians start protesting, revolting, and there's a lot of Christians.
Yeah, but let's say it's a small religion, or they don't have enough voice. What do you think would, if it was you and you were part of that group, what would you start doing?
Start growing.
Keep doing it.
Yeah, you would do it underground, right?
Yeah.
You do it behind the back. And what happens, you become more extreme. You know,
That's how extremists are born.
Extremists?
Yeah, there.
but yes, that's exactly right. So when people aren't allowed to express themselves, then they become more extreme. They can't get the opposing view. One of the best things is, you know, I'll watch these videos and it will be black men and they'll go and find, like, you know, KKK members and they'll just go talk to them and they'll be completely normal and they'll joke around with them. And it changes the opinion of those people faster than anything else. Because if you express your hateful idea to somebody and then their reaction back to you is they joke around with you and they laugh and it drowns away those ideas very quickly. It's like, oh, this guy's not like this at all. Maybe I'm wrong.
But if you react and like take it really seriously, then that's when, you know, it has actual effect.
Yeah, then the problems become in the context of, like, okay, it could start the fight, you know, and so we have to express ourselves, and when we express ourselves and we experience those things, human beings tend to have the ability to be smart enough. Now, of course, the more people you
That's
put
questionable.
the more people you put together, the more dumb people become. You know, it's like, yeah, just go to a sporting event. And see what happens when you get a lot of people angry at a referee, you know, and different things like that. But generally, the best thing has been in America, what we found over time is when we allow people to express themselves, it, one, takes away. But also, two, the second problem is that we see is now, like, universities will safe spaces, protect the kids. When you indulge in people's absurd,
Too much.
they become coddled, and they can't handle any ideas that are contrary to their own.
Yes.
And you'll notice young kids will say everything's hate speech. That makes them feel uncomfortable.
This is going to be a very controversial topic, and I don't want to be canceled, but we have to put it out there. I feel like too much freedom is not good. Like, there needs to be boundaries set. Because nowadays, everyone's just, like, so sensitive about everything. Because they think that in their point of view, I don't like hearing that. So it's hate for them.
Yeah.
Which I'm not trying to invalidate how they feel about this speech. I'm just saying that just because you don't feel that it's okay to be heard, that it's not okay to be heard for other people.
Yeah.
So you're right. People get so... I was talking about being desensitized about hate speeches in the Philippines just because, you know, people... It's not as regulated as it is here. And it's not as... Well, people, I guess, are more free to do it because we don't have systems in place to check those things, or to just technology in general. Here in the US, everything's just so advanced, and in the Philippines, everything is so not advanced that it can't really regulate it. So it's impossible to do that. But I think Filipinos are less sensitive about it.
Well, yeah, they are a lot more open to express themselves because there's no strict restrictions.
Exactly. But and I feel like that's a good thing, but also that's a bad thing. I don't know. I think I like it here, but at the same time, it's becoming more and more extreme that it might become a problem in the future.
Yeah, it becomes the larger your society and more complex your society becomes. If people do not learn to respect other people, then it becomes a bigger issue. Because at the end of the day, you cannot have everybody that's crazy out there trying to incite violence, against some other group of people. Like in the United States, we have in the Philippines, the issue isn't there, so you haven't had to deal with it in the sense of everybody in the Philippines is Filipino.
Majority, at least.
In America, we had the problem of we have multiple different nationalities, and unfortunately, what human beings were still very primitive. And when we see people who are different than us, then we have primitive ways of looking, like especially when you move all into one community and people are segregated. That's probably the best way of putting it. Okay. So if we're in those type of environments, that produces very much easy for people in the group to go, oh, well, they're like that. And then it produces more and more hate. And the last thing I wanted to address with hate, because England said that they were going to prosecute Americans that would say things and be extradited and different things like this. So it's important to understand the United States government cannot enter into any treaty with another country that would violate your constitutional rights.
Yes.
So you have a right to free speech in America. And whether that affects people in England, that's England's problem, not America's problem. They could turn off platforms if they want to, but they can't extradite. Like the United States government can't enter into an agreement and say we're going to extradite people for free speech violations. You cannot do that. The Supreme Court has already made there's a Supreme Court opinion on this. It was a different matter, but basically saying the Constitution is supreme, even with foreign governments. You can't violate the rights. However, if you're traveling in their country, it might be jurisdictional problem issues, but if they have laws and you posted things and then you go to England, the United States government is extraditing you there, and they arrest you because they identified you as a problem in their country. So you got to be mindful of the fact, and this is something very important that I want people to understand, like you might be protecting the United States, but it doesn't mean you're protected overseas.
Watch what you post. Watch what you say.
Yeah, so if you're posting things that, or if you're going to do that and then want to go travel in Europe.
Delete it first.
Delete it first. Well, I don't know if you get on like some radar or something like over there because everything's like tracked and monitored.
Everything is just tracked, yeah.
But like you got to be careful and understand that other countries don't have the same opinions that we do. And you might be arrested in another country because you posted something. I know
that's scary, man.
It is scary.
See, that's why I don't post anything about like opinions, political or whatever.
Yeah, because you don't know who you're going to offend.
Social media.
And people that have been murdered, and especially that if you get totalitarian regimes like North Korea is taking people out.
Yeah.
That have posted things that they don't like.
Yeah, I think there was a guy who visited there, and I guess he took one of Kim Jong-un's posters as a keepsake, and he got arrested and had to get bailed out by whatever country he was from.
No, he didn't get bailed out. He got killed.
Oh, he got killed.
Yeah, they arrested him and beat him up so bad it killed him. But he went to North Korea. Like, that was stupid. Like, you don't go to North Korea if you're American. like. But at the end of the day, it's not. He should not have been killed. I shouldn't mock someone for that. But Kim Jong-un has, or I think it was his dad. I don't think he has. I think it was his dad. They would have like hit teams go kill people that were saying things or posting things and making them upset. But kind of to wrap it up, you have to be careful in the other sense that while you have these protections, it doesn't mean when you're traveling abroad that you have these protections. And you might find yourself in a really bad situation. Especially the scary part right now is at least the vice president under Harris, the guy that Tim Waltz that's
Tim
running, he's expressed his opinion that hate speech is not protected by the Constitution. And so if you were arrested in a foreign country for hate speech, I don't think the Harris administration would be...
Save you.
Yeah, I think their attitude would be like, oh, it's his problem. He shouldn't say those things. Because you don't have a right for the government to come to your defense. You know, it's like the government should come to your defense, but doesn't mean that they're going to. But that is something I want to get across to people, because I see people posting things right now online, and I'm like mad at England, going, come get me, England. It's like, well,
You don't want that.
hopefully you don't travel to England. Don't have like a planned trip out there and find out. Yeah, it's not going to be very fun. But I think it's a very important topic, especially because
Especially here. I feel like a lot of people would be so surprised how do you say that? Regulated speech is outside of the U.S.
Yes.
You will be...
I think people are shocked to see a white dude wearing a wig like that from England saying that you don't have free speech. Because I think a lot of people think England and the United States, our laws are almost identical.
It's not.
No, because they don't really protect free speech. They protect... I believe that their big protection that they believe in is your home. That you're protected in your home.
So just that.
Where we highly, highly value free speech.
One of the most fundamental...
Yes.
Of the fundamental...
rights that we have.
Yeah.
That's it. That's our free speech